Okay, so we're still on chapter 22, the magic training manual. So the shivering had stopped, but Toll had a premonition that the impact of the words in the book was not over. He felt an overwhelming desire to read the first page, just the first page. Virtual worlds, what were they? Without waiting a moment longer, he held the book close to his torch. He read, "A virtual world is a place which doesn't occupy any space at all, but it still exists all the same. Such worlds are found inside movies and electronic games, in the imaginations of many minds, on computer screens, within the pages of books, behind the screens of television sets, and in many other places." Many explorers who travel inside virtual worlds report that these places look as if they are totally real, but almost every law of the physical universe can be broken in there. Toll's eyes were drawn to an illustration on the next page. A tiny spacecraft was zooming across a sky of pink. Far beneath it were mountains of sherbet, divided by rivers of lemonade. He felt a strange longing, and before he knew it, his hand had slipped into the picture plane on the page, and he was able to scoop up some of the lemony sherbet on one of the mountain's peaks. He licked his fingers and scooped up some more. It was delicious. And then there was no going back. Toll was disappearing into the page, and what was more amazing than that was that he didn't even care. All that was left in the tunnel where Toll had been standing was the tiny silver training manual that lay open-leaved on the ground, and lying beside the book was a small amount of sherbet. Toll, however, was inside a land he'd only ever imagined before that moment. Once before, long ago, maybe in a book on a shelf in his grandfather's house or somewhere, he'd seen pictures of a land like this, where everything was made of sweets. He'd often imagined lying on that powdery sherbet, staring up at the pink sky. And now he was doing it for real. Looking down the mountain of sherbet, he could see a circle of trees that seemed to be the entrance to a large forest. Toll slid down the side of the sherbet mountain, yahooing as he went. He landed quite near the trees, which were made from chocolate and sugary peppermint leaves. Picking up some of the leaves and tasting them, he marvelled at their softness and super sweetness. But when he tried to take a bit from one of the tree's chocolate trunks, he realised it was going to be difficult to get much chocolate into his mouth. It was so hard. Finally, he scratched the trunk with his fingernails and tested the shavings. It was the best chocolate he'd ever tasted. Oh, yes, this was the land for Toll Dew, all right. He was a sweet tooth extraordinaire. Looking up at the tree's tallest, smallest branches, Toll yearned to be able to reach them. They'd snap quite easily, he was certain. While he was trying to find a tree with low branches, Toll realized that he was able to ski across the sherbet quite easily. He ran a bit and then skidded right into the middle of the trees, sending one crashing to the ground. Yes, now he could easily break off one of the tree's top branches, and he did. After he'd had more than enough chocolate, Toll ventured a little more deeply into the forest. After a while, the sherbet snow disappeared, and the ground was covered in grass made from a mixture of lime jelly and spearmint tubes. There were also flowers made from brightly coloured sweets. Through the trees, Toll caught sight of a pink and white hedge, which acted as a fence for a nearby house. Although the hedge looked like it was like the sort, although the hedge looked like it was the sort Toll loved to lie in. Sorry. Although the hedge looked like it was the sort of hedge, just have to change those words. The sort of hedge Toll loved to lie in. It was actually made of completely soft marshmallow. As he walked towards the house, Toll caught sight of a shadowy figure hiding in the hedge. The person was too small to be an adult, but in case there was danger, Toll thought he'd better be on his guard. His heart raced as he wondered whether the figure would turn out to be a friend or an enemy. He wasn't sure what he wasn't sure what to expect in this weird land. "Hey, I'm only a kid," he shouted. "Who are you?" There was a giggle from inside the hedge, and then the shadowy figure called out, "I'd recognize that voice anywhere." Out of the hedge burst Jax, her black hair and clothes covered in pink and white marshmallow dust. She rushed towards Toll and hugged him. "How did you get here?" asked Toll. "You told me not to read the book. Did you read it too?" "Yeah," said Jack, shrugging her shoulders. "I realized that I was being sucked into it just before I sent my message to you." Toll sighed. "And you knew that the best way to get me to read it was to say, 'Do not read.'" Jax looked sheepish. "Sorry," she said. "But look, you're covered in sherbet." "My favourite," said Toll, smiling. "And I've eaten heaps of chocolate." "So good," said Jax. "Have you explored much?" asked Toll. "Give me a break," said Jax. "I've only been here a few minutes longer than you." Toll laughed. "Of course," he said. "But how did we end up in here?" Jax widened her eyes. "I have no idea. When I realized I was being dragged into the book, I was part way through a message to you. I knew I only had a few seconds, and I was pretty sure that if I asked you to read the training manual, you wouldn't. So I thought I'd warn you not to read it." Toll grinned. "You know me well. I sent the book to you just as I was disappearing into it." "And you were already inside it," Jax nodded. "Yeah, I was a bit worried about that." "Where did you find the book?" Long story. In case you hadn't noticed," said Toll, "we have a bit of time." Jax looked worried. "I don't want to be stuck in here. Do you think we can telepath anyone?" "Don't know," said Toll. "Try." Toll and Jax both sent messages to their parents, but no message came back. "Anything?" asked Toll. "No," said Jax with a sigh. We must be out of range." Said Toll, sitting on the ground. "How are you anyway? It must have been horrible with those thugs that Isla sent." "It was awful," said Jax. "But I was rescued quickly, and the ice witches performed first aid on my memory, so I know it happened, but I can barely feel any of the trauma of it." "Good," said Toll, offering Jax some leftover chocolate twigs. "Is Dodger okay?" asked Jax. "Yeah, he's safe at my place," said Toll, "but we have Isla next door, so everyone's staying inside." They sat eating chocolate for a bit. "We'll figure out said how to escape from here," said Jack, settling into the lime green jelly grass. "But we might as well enjoy it while we are here." Toll grinned and then sat up straight. "Hey, do you remember when we met Halo?" he asked. "I do. He's way weird." Toll nodded. "Weird but good," he said. "I can remember a strange dream, but it's all blurry. Halo said I'd be rescuing people. I'm sure he did. But from where?" "I don't know," said Jack, sitting up too. "It was your dream." "Yeah, that was it. He said I'd be rescuing people from virtual worlds. That was why the book's title looked familiar. Entering Virtual Worlds, a training manual." Toll shook his head in disbelief. "I wonder who the people are," said Jax, wide-eyed. "Who knows? Also, I don't know whether or not to trust Halo." Jax looked horrified. "You mustn't think like that," she said. "My parents told me all about Halo and Magal." "Magal? Halo mentioned him. He sounds terrible. Something about hurricanes and earthquakes." Jax shook her head. "He's great, and And he's a magic time pirate. He travels all over time and space rescuing people. I love the sound of him. He sounds way grander than me, said Toll with a groan. Jax rolled her eyes. At least you know you're going to rescue people from virtual worlds. The dream told you that. And we're in a virtual world, so that's something at least. Yeah, that's a help, snorted Toll. The great rescuer doesn't even know how he got in here, let alone how to get out. We could start by checking out that house, suggested Jax. Toll nodded. Can't hurt, he said. As they headed towards the house, Toll began to feel a strange new sensation. It felt good, as if everything everywhere was going to be all right. And what was more, he realized that he was beginning to believe the story the angel had told him in the dream, the story about himself. It suddenly seemed possible that he was destined to rescue people. He raised his eyebrows at this strange new thought, and then he smiled. Halo had been right about one thing. He was having an adventure. The only thing was that he wasn't sure whether or not it was a real adventure or the dreamy kind. Still, the chocolate tasted real enough. He wondered what they'd find in that house and how on earth their adventure would end.